Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Hi, Lisa. How are ya?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Great, great, great. As many of our listeners know, you and I do not live in the same state. So we get together and batch out some of these episodes. So this is, I don't know what month we're in, but we're batching out some episodes together this time around. So I'm just happy to be with you. Good to see you.
Very excited to be here.
We have a little bit of a new set, too. I don't want to sit at a table anymore. And so I told everybody, no shoes, no table. I need a chair, and I need to relax if I do this for 3 days straight. And so if you guys are watching on YouTube and you don't like it, I am very sorry. My comfort comes before your visual preferences.
That part. Love it.
So yeah, I want to introduce our guest today. I'm gonna mess up the last name, like I always do.
Dodier.
Yeah, Dodier. Stephanie Dodier. There we go. Lisa always crushes it. Welcome to the podcast, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm very excited to be with you here today.
Great. Well, why don't we just start? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our guests, and then we'll jump right into our conversation today.
Absolutely. I'm a woman who spent 25 years deeply entrenched in diet culture. And today I have liberated myself from diet culture and help other women do the same. Clinical nutritionist specializing in body image and cognitive behavior coaching.
Oh, wow.
Love it.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Well, what we're doing this time around in the podcast, we usually would ask this question at the end of the podcast in the past. And what we're doing now is we're asking it in the beginning so that we can take a deeper dive on what some of these shedding of these beliefs and some of these transformations that we go through internally. So we can just take a little bit of a deeper dive in that. So I'd love to start by asking you, what is a belief that you once had that you no longer have that has really just shifted and impacted your life in a really meaningful or significant way?
I still have the memory of the moment I shifted that belief, which is my worth, my self-worth is something to be earned and maintained.
Yeah.
And I still remember I was coaching with one of my coaches at the time, and I remember when that shifted in me was a full body sensation. I realized that all human beings, including me, no exception, were born worthy. And it changed my life.
I mean, I think that we hear that, but how did you embody that? What do you think shifted? I've had people tell me that for a while, and I now feel it more, but how do you embody that? How do you believe that?
For me, it came in the circumstance, most particularly of body image. I had already done the acceptance around all bodies are worthy, but except mine. Mine was so different, so bad, that I was the exception to the rule. Yeah. And the continued denial that I wasn't like everybody else maintained me in a struggle in accepting myself and my body.
Yeah. I think we do that a lot. It's easier to be kind. I tell my clients a lot, too. It's easier to be kind to other people than it is to ourselves, which really seems backwards, right? Because I live with me all day, every day. So you would think coming home to myself and being kind to myself would be very easy, but it's not. And I think, it has a lot to do with, things I'm sure we'll talk about, but society, the patriarchy, capitalism. But it's very okay, especially for women, to say nice things about other people and their bodies, but to say mean things about our own bodies and to struggle with accepting compliments. That was something I had to learn when I went through this similar transformation of letting go of diet culture and accepting my body. It's being able to let someone say something nice about me and just saying thank you instead of saying, oh no, you don't mean what you're saying, this old thing. Oh no, I got so much more work to do, all these things. And there's something very liberating about just accepting it and being kind to yourself and opening up that space to be kind. So when you shifted, where was the first area of growth for you in regard to being kinder to yourself and recognizing your worth, and no longer, like, was there something you stopped doing that you used to do when you didn't believe you were worthy, or something you started doing, that you weren't doing before? What did that look like for you?
For me, it's the word healing. So in this journey of changing my relationship to food and body, I was on the constant, there's always the next thing. There's always the next thing. Like, it was food, then the next thing it was body, and then the next thing was exercise. And it was always the next and the next thing, and allowing myself not to have anything else, which is part of this, like, I am enough.
Right.
I don't have to prove. Like, this whole notion of proving myself came through healing the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. Or the next area of my life, body, food, work, relationship, and allowing myself to say healing is complete and
So
not
it's like,
pursue anything else.
Yeah. Okay, so that's deep to me, because I think we've talked about this a few times on the podcast, because we're in a climate of, like, professional development, personal development,
Yes.
improving, the next course, the next certification, the next, energy class, like, all these different things to be better, to be my most highest self. And I think there's beauty in that. But we turn ourselves into constant projects. And so that's been a part of my thing too. Like, I am not a constant project to be fixed. I am not, I don't have to be doing the very next thing. Like, what's next? So that's very powerful. I think our listeners will relate to that, maybe not know that they relate to that, because that whole concept of, like, being better, it's applauded. It's like, oh, look at you running further, look at you getting another certification or degree. Look, it's like something to applaud people for, and it is a great thing to achieve something. But also, why are we doing this? Like, what are we trying to earn our value again? And it can be repeated in diet culture, outside of diet culture.
Well, it's everywhere.
It's
I always
everywhere.
ask myself, who are you doing this for? Right. And then I get to a spot, and then I go, oh.
Not me.
I mean, and even if I, like, could define who that was for,
Right.
if that is if I get to the thing and then I do it for that person, am I really wanting to be in deep, authentic connection with someone who only finds my worth out of a certain condition? Absolutely not.
Right.
And I think that one of the things that has really helped me is deepening friendships that feel authentic, where I don't feel like I have anything to prove.
Yeah.
And when I see that I have these meaningful people in my life who love me when I have a good day, who love me when I fail, who love me when I'm happy, who love me when I'm sad, who love me when I'm angry. That's not an accepted emotion for women, right?
Right.
And so when I feel that, I go, oh, that's what I'm trying to get anyway. So then when I start going, I'm doing all this, and I go, who are you doing it for? Because remember what authentic connection feels like with those friendships. That's what it feels like. You don't have to do anything. But it's so hard because we live in the world and we don't live in a cave. And there's just messages all the time that tell us, you will be worthy when. And, like, running away from our problems is or problems, I don't even know if that's the right word, but, like, running away from that idea that I am inherently worthy will always show up in that next thing. So I love that you say, like, I just stopped doing that. I just didn't let myself go to the next thing.
And it's discovering all the pattern. As you say, I no longer heal, I am enough. Discovering all the pattern you created in your life to accommodate this thought that I am not enough and I have to earn my worth. And it's recognizing everywhere it shows up. And for me, it was big in my business. Like, big in, like, overworking and over offering session time, cheaping, okay?
No, we all do that.
Yeah. Oh, you too, girl. It's hard.
But it's the patriarchy, right? It's the patriarchy because I'm raised as a woman and I identify as a woman in a world that is not made for me. So everywhere I go, I have to prove myself, not just with my body, but with business and money. And it develops all kinds of patterns everywhere.
We were just talking about this last night. Yeah, we went to dinner last night. We were talking about all of that. And just that, like, even before we started, so I do this thing, like, in the company that I have, WeShape, where I say, okay, I know exactly what I want and the vision that I have. And then I double check with everyone to make sure they like it. And then I bend and mold like Gumby to make everybody feel really good about it. And even before we started this podcast, I said, we used to like film all these clips and do these promotional things. And I said, Lisa, do you really like doing that? And you're like, it's okay. I don't mind. I'm like, we don't like doing it. Just stop. Let's just stop doing that.
No more.
So
Yes.
it's just this like, but I'm going to tell you something, Stephanie, because when people say that's not how business is run, when they tell you that, I go, oh, okay, I don't know. I'll do it your way.
Exactly.
And if we do it my way, then I'm bossy. But if I do it your way, you're a thought leader. And so it's like, can we just like say, I don't want to do it that way? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't
And you know,
play those rules.
that's what I just did. I came off of a month off of work.
Ugh.
Oh, wow.
Never. So I've been in business. I have 2 businesses. This is the second business for 8 years. And I've never taken like complete off, no coaching, no clients, no nothing. And it revealed so much things I don't want to do anymore.
Oh, man.
And I don't do that.
Yeah, I've never done that either. I am inspired by this. I think that is the next step, the journey. Oh my, a whole month.
And it was the discomfort. The first week was like anxiety riddled.
I'm uncomfortable thinking about it. So,
There you go.
Yeah.
It was like anxious of doing nothing, and then it became uncomfortable of doing nothing because it's just something I'm not used to. Yeah. And then in the last 2 weeks, it finally became comfortable. I'm like, I want more of this.
Oh, wow.
How do I need to shape my business so I have more time off? And I would have never thought about how do I need to think about business to have more time off. I would not have allowed myself that question.
And I think that like it does go back to the idea like you're allowed to break the rules, and because the rules weren't made for us anyway, so it's like you're allowed to break them. And I think that going back to what your belief was around I'm worthy regardless is the place that it has to start, because if you don't inherently feel that, you will never feel like you're allowed to do it the way that you feel is best for you. You will always be following someone else's rule. But I want to ask an important question because I do think it's important to understand where those beliefs come from. So where did that belief for you come from that I am not worthy? Like, whose voice was that in your mind? Was it the culture? Was it a parent? Was it like, whose voice was that? Because we all know that's not your voice.
It was one of
was
my
it?
parents' voice. And in therapy, I did the work of understanding where their voice come from. So my parents were raised in the 40s and 50s, an era of Great Depression in America. So for them, they didn't have enough money, they didn't have enough food, they didn't have enough work, and they became programmed with that. And they haven't done the work to unprogram that. So they live their life with that and raise their children thinking that was the best way of being raised. So I just became somebody where entrenchedly was never told you're enough. And you had to work harder and harder to be enough, but never achieving that. So in a way, yes, it's the patriarchy because my parents were raised in that, but it's also circumstance of the generation they were in.
Yeah.
And they did their best by teaching me to respond to that, you're not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to unpack that and unpack that voice and find myself. Example, other people, other women who looked like me, talked like me, were like me, that were enough and were claiming it. So I can see it modeled. And then it gradually became a belief of mine.
That modeling is important because when you don't see it in childhood, you don't even know. It's like you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing. You're like, this is the world I was born into. This is what it is. And then it takes all it takes is that little seed. We were talking about this last night too. A little seed to be planted. You see one woman who looks like you or reminds you of yourself in some way or that you have some commonality with. And it's like, oh, she's doing something different.
Yeah.
And especially growing up, your parents growing up in that time frame and then you growing up after that, things were very different for women. Like we talked about this last night, women not being able to have a mortgage in the United States until, the late 70s probably, and then not being able to, just do things on their own, not have a bank account, you know what I mean? So to shift, it was such a progressive thought to even be like, I am worthy all by myself. Like, without a man on my arm, I'm worthy alone. And like, we're still talking about that in 2024. Like, those are still think pieces on the internet around people's value and worth and what's better or worse in women. And it's ridiculous, but it's still a topic of conversation because people are still struggling, especially women, with understanding their value and worth outside of attention from a man or
being married,
chosen, being
having
married.
children.
That part. Oh yeah. Well yeah.
I want to
this all week.
I want to share a story that illustrates that, because my grandmother, who's 100, she's still alive and rocking, told me about 8 years ago when I was going through this process of unlearning and relearning. She quietly one day pulled me aside and said, "You're living the life I wish I could."
Oh my gosh.
Because she was part of that generation in my culture, French Canadian, where women weren't allowed to control birthing. So she had 12 children.
Sweet.
Yeah, sweet something. And the priest used to, in our culture, the priest used to coming at your house and monitor how many children you had. So she pulled me aside and she said, "You're living the life that I wish I had. Keep going no matter what people say. You're doing it for me."
Beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
But it's just to show you the depth of patriarchy and other system in my culture, where I'm the first woman in my family to live on her own a good life.
Wow. That's
The first woman in my family. Alone, not married, no kids, like just doing it by myself. Like, there's still a lot of generational, patriarchal
it is.
things we need to change. Like, we're just at the beginning of it.
I told Lisa last night, like, I have always had this, like, weird, like, I can feel energy. And, like, I didn't know what it meant when I was little, but I could feel my one grandmother that I spent a lot of time with, I could feel her discomfort. And now, as I didn't actually realize it until I started going through my own journey of unsubscribing and understanding what the conditioning I was living out of, until I went, oh, that thing you were feeling with her was actually her, like, total discomfort and stuckness because she didn't have a choice. And I'll share a quick story that might paint me in a crazy light, but I don't really care. Is that I went and did this Reiki session one time. I think I told Lisa about this. And I was with my friend. We were both in the same room, and the lady started with me. And in the session, each of my grandmothers came, and each were holding one of my feet at the bottom of the table. And it was like they were there. Like, I was there. It was crazy. But I wasn't scared or anything that they were there. And they said the same thing to me. Keep going. You're doing this for us. Don't stop. And it was a wild experience, but it felt incredibly real. And I feel like they didn't have a choice, and we do. And so what a gift. And I just really appreciate that story, because it just really highlights how important it's important for all of us, even people who are here with us, my grandmothers who are no longer here with us, and for the people, our daughters behind us, you know?
Yeah.
100%. Okay, it doesn't even matter. I was going to say when this airs, but it doesn't even matter. The people in this room know, and now everyone listening will know, I'm in the middle of a divorce. And that story is very similar to something that I experienced sitting in a meditative, like, position. I started really going through the turmoil in the marriage and just trying to reconfigure my life. I started really, really being intentional about morning meditations. And so I can recall a meditation. All of my grandparents and parents are gone, so I don't have anyone left in that regard other than my aunt. And I remember sitting there meditating and just trying to listen. Like I just wanted some guidance, a download. And I saw this vision of my mom sitting next to me, my grandma sitting next to her, and then my dad's mom, who I didn't even have a real relationship with, kind of standing in the back. And I felt them pulling me and saying, it's okay. Like, you can go. And it was really the confirmation that I needed to know that divorce was going to be the best option for me. And it's really hard, especially my marriage started in my 20s. We were very much in the church. My husband was an ordained reverend. So it's very different to then say, okay, I'm just going to throw all this away and not be a married woman anymore. As a child, that is what I looked to for safety. I thought that was how you achieve success. You find a good husband. I mean, I went to school, of course, and got my own education, but you find a good husband, you have children, you have a family, you settle down. That depicts a lot of your worth and value. And so to then walk away from that felt extremely scary. It's like, taking a month off from work and you have to take care of yourself. It's like, wait, what am I doing? But even still going through it, like we're still going through the process, but I feel so much better, so much lighter, like I'm going in the right direction. And I feel like the energy and the spirit of my mother and my grandmothers are with me, and they're like, you got this, like, do this. This is important for you. You're honoring yourself. And I know people won't always see it like that, but that's not my job to convince anyone.
No, because it becomes more about your self-sacrifice to show up for what you think you should.
Yeah.
And then this work and the shift in perception and belief and discovering your worth then puts you in a place where we said last night, you can't go back.
No.
You can't. No. It's not even possible to go back. And then the act of self-betrayal, nothing can now break that. It's like, okay, yeah, it's probably not your first choice to have to go that way.
Right.
It's causing you a lot of stress and pain. And but you know what? You're not going to betray yourself anymore. It's not an option. And so it's like you will always choose you.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the realest experience that you can have. And what were we told as little girls? You're selfish if you choose you. So, but guess what? That's a lie. And I do not betray myself anymore.
Right.
Like when I get little micro self-betrayals, I'm like, damn you, Katie, why'd you do that shit? But it's like, it becomes like a non-negotiable of self-betrayal. It's like all the voices used to control and power and like puppeteer what you were supposed to do. And now you're like, hell no, I'm not doing that. And you don't, it's like there's not even an apology for it. Look at how, like.
Because why? And this, I think this speaks to your story. Like, you're breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Like, how does it feel like to be like a rule breaker? Or like my friend Nedra calls it, a cycle breaker, really.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. Yeah.
Highly uncomfortable at the beginning as you break the cycle, as you go through the shift, I call it, like as you're going through your divorce right now, highly uncomfortable. But now it's my joy. It's my pride. It's my silver horse. I'm like, when you say like I can't betray myself anymore, doing what I used to do is not even something I can imagine. I'm not even considering it because it feels highly, I don't want to use the word disgusting, but ugly. Like,
ugly,
yeah, something that's like, ugh, can't think even about doing that. And I want to give an example also with health, because I live in a fat body, and when I came back from my month off, I went very far away. So I did a 33-hour airplane ride to get to where I was going, to where I was from. And I came back with a thrombosis, which is a blood clot in my lower leg, which is, on the scale of things that could have happened, it's like medium. But as a person living in a fat body, in a medical system that's fat-phobic,
absolutely,
it's always a challenge. Like, are they going to offer me the option because I'm fat or just because I'm a human, right? Mm-hmm. So you always have to affirm yourself in front of the medical professional. Yeah. And I was thinking about that, like, as I was waiting in the hospital, I'm like, if they tell me I have to lose weight, like, it's not even possible for me. Like, it's not like, what would you say? Would you even do it? I'm like, it's not even, like, I'm like, no, it's not even something I would consider.
Yeah. Right.
even if somebody tell me you're going to die, I'm like, well, let's die, because I ain't going back on a diet.
Absolutely.
Like, so I think it's a great example of like the shift is complete. Like it's no longer part of you.
It's no longer even, like you said, on your option list. It's like,
Yeah.
what? We're not doing that.
We're not. Like, give me other option, because otherwise I'm going to walk away with that thrombosis in my leg.
Yep, exactly. Which, to be very clear, and I know this is our first time meeting, Stephanie, but I am a physical therapist, and I do weight and size inclusive care, and I do body image coaching for people, and it's trauma informed and anti-diet. And I'm starting to do more advocacy in the medical field, because I have patients who can't get major, life-altering medical procedures like total knee replacements, total hip replacements, because their BMI is too high. And we know what the research is on the BMI. We know it's stupid. We know it shouldn't even be used in modern medical care, but we still use it, and we deny people medical services. So we're doing harm as a medical system. And our medical system is very fat-phobic and stigmatizes people in large bodies. And so I spend a lot of time empowering my clients to say, hey, excuse me, what treatment options would you give someone in a thinner body with these same concerns? What would you say to them? Because I need those treatment options. I don't want to hear about your weight loss, the drug that you're going to get some, kickbacks for if you refer me to, write me a prescription for. I don't want any of that. I don't want you to tell me, lazy medicine, just lose some weight and it'll get better, because the research is clear on that. Nothing just becomes better because you lost weight. If that were the case, people who got liposuction would get up and their knees would feel fine. They wouldn't have sleep apnea. They wouldn't have, congestive heart failure. That's not how it works. That's not how our bodies work. So that piece is very powerful. But when it no longer becomes an option for you, when you're like, I'm not doing it, it doesn't matter what you say to me. And I can respect your medical degree and your experience and your expertise, but you're not respecting me as the only person who's ever lived in this body, because I'm the expert of that. And so we can't work together. So I tell people to get new doctors. There's a website I always refer people to, Dr. Asher Larmy's noway.org, and Way is WEIGH. Great information, resources, research, for professionals and for lay people, but for you to kind of feel like, to know that what you're asking for is not ridiculous, to know that the respect that you're demanding should be given. It's basic, but in our medical system you just don't get it. So I applaud you for standing up for yourself and recognizing we're never going back to that. We're never going back to a diet, because we know what it does to us inherently. Yeah. And it speaks to us less, valuing ourselves less as well. So,
and I think that's where when somebody's listening to this and they're doing their own work, always think about, how am I going to shift my belief and my mindset? Because as people raised in patriarchy as one of the many systems, our mindset needs to change also and upgrade, so we can have these boundaries and these hard conversations that we're not afraid of affirming ourselves. And for that to be expressed, there's a lot of inner work in our brain that needs to happen to unlearn all the submissive behavior as women in patriarchy we have learned to embody.
We've learned to put that on a pedestal. Seriously, I feel like growing up, the idea was that the more submissive a woman was, the more desirable she would be. Absolutely. And you can have your degrees in education, but you still better submit to this man, young lady. That's what I remember feeling. And I didn't get this from my mom. Let me say that. My mom was a bit of a rebel. She didn't buy into this shit as much. But I was raised in the church, and the church was very clear on that. And then on the other side of, being extremely submissive was this idea that you had to be selfless. Yeah. It's like as selfless as possible. And my grandmother, God rest her soul, amazing woman, but I watched her work herself just to the point of exhaustion, to not only raise her children, but to then raise her daughter's children, and to look after this husband who was extremely abusive to her. And she just did it day in and day out. And I remember thinking, and I realized as she got older, she didn't have friends, and she did lean into the church and her spiritual community, which I know helped and sustained her in many ways, but also in some ways kept her very oppressed. So I just remember thinking, I don't want my kids to call me selfless. And I wrote a blog on that, literally, because I was like, I don't want them to be like, Mom was so selfless. She just took care of it. I'm like, because I'm raising 2 daughters and a son, and I don't want them to ever think that that is your way to success and worthiness, to just give yourself up to the world and to everybody around you and have nothing left for yourself. So my kids know, and now they are advocates for that, and they support me in that. My 13-year-old daughter, I'm like, I wanted to go out, but, the kids. She's like, Mommy, we're fine. Go have fun. She's like, leave. Go have fun with your friends. It's important. And she speaks to me the words that I was speaking, before. And so it's really empowering to see the shift happening with the next generation of women, of men, so that they understand the importance of caring for yourself and loving on yourself and not being so selfless that there's nothing left for you. I don't buy into that. But yeah, submission and selflessness, those are the 2 things. Like, I'm not really adopting those. Those will never be my words for the year.
Well, and I think that there's this cycle that happens that I've noticed in myself that is just the patriarchy in a different way, which is, okay, I see my worth and I see my value, and I see where I have been made small. And now it's my job to educate the people who are participating in that system so that they can validate that I need that and that I deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I don't have to, that's just that again.
Mm-hmm. Right.
My friend told me the other day, like, you could just, like, drop the rope and, like, be like, no, this is my decision, and just move on.
Bye.
Like, you don't have to like get people to agree with you in order. It's like, do you see how it's just the same thing? It's like, okay, well, now we figured it out and I have the evidence to show the patriarchy exists and this is the way it's coming out in these nuanced ways, in these subconscious ways, and now we know, so we can all change and everyone's on board, right? And the people who benefit the most are like, absolutely not. I'm not on board. I'm not open to that. And then I'm like, oh, I guess I have to stay over here then. It's like, actually, that's just that still happening. You could just, and so I have to learn for myself, one of my biggest pieces right now in my current day life is to not give my energy to trying to convince other people that this is why we should unsubscribe from that. It's, oh, okay, I accept your belief. And I think about, I have 100 units of energy a day. And I had to ask myself a couple weeks ago, how many units are you giving away to convince other? That your decisions and beliefs and behaviors and rule breaking and this and that, there's reason, there's evidence, there's data. No.
But
live and let live. You can live your belief, and I'm gonna just not, because that's still giving energy and power away.
Yeah, but I think I want to say it's the hand phase of healing.
Yeah.
When you can truly witness the resistance and not react.
That's some black belt spiritual shit right there.
It is.
Here's an example. Social media. The whole time you were giving your example is like, I often use my body. Like I'll post reels of me in a bathing suit and my fat body. And then you have the white men coming in and telling me how awful this is, right?
Right.
And I used to argue with them.
Right.
Now I do one thing. Block, delete. No shame in the game. Block, delete, block, delete. I have no time to give to you.
Yeah.
Can
Block,
I add
delete?
Block and delete.
I like that. We're gonna label this episode block and
Block and delete.
Let's take note of that. Block and delete.
I want to
just
add one more thing to your list. Submission, I
please.
think you talked about. The one for me that is big, particularly with body image, because that's my world, is the safety of conformity.
Yes.
So let's think about that in the context of weight loss and diet culture and body image. When people tell me, but I felt so much more confident when I was smaller, what I hear is, when I was conforming to the expectation of my body as a woman, I felt safer from those people in the comment section or people judging you. Compliance is safety. So when we live in the world of patriarchy, for an example, not being submissive is unsafe. We have to learn to create the inner safety because we'll never get it from the outside.
That's such a great point. You're right. It is about safety. Every time we break free from one of these, oppressive tools or systems, we are putting ourselves in a position where we are less safe. We are absolutely less safe. And that can be physical safety, emotional safety, all of the categories. So creating that safety is important because we all want to be safe. Everybody, that's an innate human desire, like safety. We want safety. So it makes sense. And it's also how I keep myself from judging people when they're still in that world. When they're still, because I get it. I was there.
Yeah.
And judgment wouldn't have helped me. So, reserving that judgment and recognizing like people are just trying to seek safety. They're just trying to feel good. They're trying to feel better about themselves. This idea that like, oh, when I was in a smaller body, I felt more confident, probably getting more validation, less mean comments, less mean words. Who doesn't want that? That feels like a better life. But really what you're doing is betraying yourself. And in order to make yourself fit in and look a certain way and conform to whatever society says is for us. And it's just not it. So this is definitely not the path of least resistance. Like, to be very clear. We are like purposely taking the path of more resistance. And it's hard and it's scary and it's uncomfortable. It's disconcerting. But the beauty on the other side of it, the liberation on the other side of it, is worth it. I call it worthy work. This is worthy.
Ooh, I love
work.
that.
Like we are doing work that it matters. It changes everything.
And I used to think that the worst pain was the rejection, and now the worst pain is self-betrayal. So
Like
you
that
think
shift.
that's the worst pain, but it's not. That's another trap. Once you break free from it, the self-betrayal is so much worse. So that's why I said you can't go back. There's no going back because it's so much more painful than conforming at that point. So, well, we could talk to you forever, Stephanie.
I know.
We have to go. We wish we didn't. We'd love to know, can you tell our guests where they can find you and the amazing work you're doing?
Absolutely. So the easiest way on the podcast is to go to your app and look for Beyond the Food Podcasts. It's been running for 7 years. You will find more than almost 400 episodes now on all topics: body, food, mindset, feminism, or my website, stephaniedodier.com. And I offer all kinds of services for women on food and body image and health and mindset and business as well, feminist business. So that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much. We'll put all of that in the show notes, and block and delete, everyone.
Yes.
We'll end the episode with that. Thank you so much, Stephanie. We really loved having you.
Thank you.